I am Joshua, 38 years old, and my wealthy parents kicked me out of the house at 19 for getting my blue-collar electrician girlfriend pregnant. Before I tell you about how my mother ended up sobbing on my porch 19 years later begging for my help, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. It was Thanksgiving 2006. If you grew up in a working-class family, Thanksgiving probably meant football, a chaotic kitchen, and loud relatives. In my family, the Carroll household, it looked like a corporate board meeting with better silverware. My parents, Dr. Charles and Dr. Margaret Carroll, lived in a massive estate in Portland Heights. Every person sitting at that long mahogany dining table had a medical degree or a law degree. My older brother, Julian, was already in his first year of medical school, sitting there with his chin tilted up, soaking in my parents' approval like a sponge. And then there was me, 19 years old, terrified, and sitting next to Sarah. Sarah was 19 too. She didn't own a silk dress or pearls. She wore a simple black dress she bought at a thrift store just for this dinner. Her hands were rough, calloused from stripping wires and hauling heavy tools. She was an electrician's apprentice. I was madly in love with her, and she was 7 months pregnant with our daughter. We had tried to hide it. Sarah wore oversized sweaters for weeks, but my mother noticed everything. She had eyes like a hawk scanning for weakness. Right before the turkey was carved, the clinking of crystal glasses stopped. My mother set down her wine glass and looked at Sarah's stomach, then locked eyes with me. Her voice cut through the dining room like a scalpel. "Joshua, stand up." I stood. The entire table went dead silent. 12 pairs of eyes stared at me. My father, a renowned cardiac surgeon, wiped his mouth with a linen napkin and leaned back in his heavy oak chair. "How far along is she?" my father asked. His tone wasn't angry. It was clinical, cold. 7 months, I said. My voice shook, and I hated myself for it. "We are getting married." Julian let out a short, mocking laugh from across the table. "Married? To the girl who fixes the stadium lights? Joshua, please tell me this is a joke." My mother didn't laugh. She opened a drawer in the dining room sideboard and pulled out a thick manila folder. She tossed it onto the table. It slid across the polished wood and stopped right in front of me. She had run a background check. She actually hired a private investigator to dig into a 19-year-old girl's life. Sarah and Evans. My mother read from a perfectly typed sheet of paper. High school graduate. Trade school certificate. Makes $14 an hour working with her hands. She paused, letting the silence suffocate the room. And her father, Dr. Robert Evans. Medical license permanently revoked in 1993 for gross malpractice and insurance fraud. Abandoned his family shortly after. Current whereabouts unknown. Sarah stiffened next to me. I reached down and grabbed her hand. It was ice cold. "You want to tie the Carroll family name to a disgraced doctor's daughter?" my mother asked, her voice rising. "A girl whose blue-collar job will disgrace our family?" I should have yelled. I should have flipped the table. Instead, I tried to reason with them. Sarah works 60 hours a week to support herself. She is nothing like her father. She is honest, and she is going to be a great mother. My father stood up. He was a tall man, imposing, the kind of guy who commanded operating rooms just by walking in. "Joshua, you are going to terminate the pregnancy. I will arrange a private clinic. It will be handled quietly. You will take a gap year, go to Europe, and start your pre-med classes next fall as planned. This mistake does not have to define your life." I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw a man who viewed his own grandchild as a PR disaster. "I am keeping my child," I said. "And I am marrying Sarah." My father didn't even blink. "Then you are not keeping this family. You have 1 hour to pack your things." An hour later, I walked out the heavy front doors of my childhood home carrying 2 garbage bags filled with my clothes and my laptop. It was pouring rain. November in Oregon is brutal. Sarah was waiting in her beat-up 1998 Ford pickup truck in the driveway. It had rust on the quarter panels and the passenger door didn't lock right. She got out in the freezing rain, grabbed one of the garbage bags, and tossed it into the truck bed under a blue tarp. She didn't cry. She didn't ask me what we were going to do. She just looked at me, soaking wet, and said, "I already called the courthouse. We can get married on Friday." I didn't cry when my parents threw me out. I cried when this amazing woman, who had absolutely nothing, offered me a future. Let's fast forward 19 years. I am standing in my living room. It is a quiet Tuesday evening. The doorbell rings frantically. I open the door, and there, standing on my porch in the pouring rain, is my mother. Parked at the curb is her sleek, silver Porsche. She looks older, frail, her expensive coat soaked through. Her hands are shaking violently. "Joshua," she sobbed, her voice cracking in a way I had never heard before. "Please, you have to let me in. Your dad was—" I stared at the woman who erased me from her life nearly 2 decades ago. I saw the tears streaming down her face. And then, I slowly, deliberately, closed the heavy front door right in her face. To understand how I could do that, how I could leave my own mother crying in the rain, you need to know exactly what happened during those 19 years in between. We got married on a Friday at the Multnomah County Courthouse. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry bees. We didn't have a single relative from my side there. Sarah's mom had passed away years ago, so it was just the two of us. We needed witnesses, so we asked an elderly woman waiting for a divorce hearing and a random lawyer killing time in the hallway to sign our paperwork. I bought a tungsten ring online for $40. Sarah wore her work boots. It was the best day of my life. Our first apartment was 480 square feet. It smelled permanently of old cabbage and damp carpet. The rent was $650 a month, and some months we barely made it. I had no degree, no trust fund, no safety net. The Carroll family cut off my phone, my bank accounts, my health insurance. Everything. I needed a job immediately. I swallowed my pride and walked into the very hospital where my father was the chief of surgery. I applied for the only job I could get with a high school diploma: overnight janitor. I spent my nights mopping the floors of the emergency room, cleaning up blood and vomit. During the day, I took online classes at the community college for medical administration and coding. Sarah worked as an electrician from dawn until dusk. She would come home smelling of copper wire, ozone, and exhaustion. Her belly grew bigger, but she never complained. Not once. We slept on a mattress on the floor, mapping out our grocery budget to the exact penny. In August 2007, our daughter Lily was born. She had Sarah's dark eyes and my stubborn chin. Holding her in that sterile hospital room, wrapped in a cheap cotton blanket, I felt a kind of fierce, overwhelming love I didn't know existed. And in that moment of vulnerability, I made a mistake. I thought about my parents. I thought, surely a baby changes things. Surely, looking at this beautiful, innocent little girl would melt the ice in their veins. I drafted an email to my father's private address. I attached a photo of Lily sleeping. I wrote, "Mom, Dad, Lily was born yesterday. She is healthy and perfect. We live in a small apartment on the east side. I am working full-time. I am not asking you for money. I am not even asking you to forgive me. I am just asking you to meet your granddaughter. Just once. Please." I hit send at 11:30 p.m. I stared at the ceiling until dawn, waiting. The reply came at 8:02 a.m. It wasn't from my father. It was from Patricia Henderson, his executive assistant. "Joshua, Dr. Charles and Dr. Margaret Carroll have asked me to inform you that they do not have a granddaughter. Please do not contact this office again." I read those words 3 times. The screen blurred. My chest tightened so hard I couldn't pull air into my lungs. They didn't even have the courage to reject me themselves. They had their secretary do it. I printed that email, folded it up, and put it in a lockbox. I swore to myself right then and there, I would build a life so solid, so full of love, that my daughter would never feel the absence of the people who didn't want her. We worked ourselves to the bone. Sarah got her journeyman license. She started picking up side jobs, rewiring old houses on the weekends. I got my medical coding certificate, I moved from pushing a mop to sitting at a desk handling hospital billing. My starting salary was barely above minimum wage, but I was relentless. I learned every loophole, every insurance policy, every billing code in the book. By the time Lily was 5, I got a massive promotion to revenue cycle supervisor. We bought a foreclosure house that was falling apart. Sarah rewired the entire place herself, working late into the night while Lily slept in a playpen in the living room surrounded by drywall dust. We saved every penny. We started a college fund for Lily before we even had a decent couch. Life was hard, but it was ours. We never saw my family. Portland is a big city, but the medical community is small. Occasionally, I would see my brother Julian's name on a hospital directory. He was a hotshot orthopedic surgeon now. I heard rumors he was going through a messy divorce and fighting a brutal custody battle over his kids. I didn't reach out. They made their choice. Lily grew up incredible. She watched her mother build a successful electrical contracting business from nothing. She watched me climb the corporate ladder in hospital administration to become a regional director. She saw what real work looked like. When she graduated high school with top honors, she didn't want a fancy car or a big party. She sat us down at the kitchen table and told us she wanted to go to medical school. "Not to be like them, Dad," she told me, knowing exactly what I was thinking. "I want to be a doctor because I want to fix broken things. Mom fixes houses. You fix hospital bills so regular people don't go bankrupt. I want to fix people. And I want to prove you don't need a dynasty behind you to do it." She got a partial scholarship to Oregon State University for pre-med. We were so proud we could barely speak. We had won. We had beaten the odds. The Carroll family and their toxic legacy were in the rearview mirror. Or so I thought, because the past doesn't just disappear. Sometimes, it waits in the shadows, letting you get comfortable before it kicks the front door off its hinges. It started on a Tuesday in September. A FedEx delivery truck pulled up to our house. The driver handed me a thick, heavy envelope. It required a signature. The return address was Ashworth and Klein, an international law firm based in Sydney, Australia. I threw it on the kitchen counter. Sarah came in from the garage, wiping grease off her hands. "What's that?" she asked. "No idea. Jury duty from another country," I joked. I tore open the heavy cardboard. Inside was a stack of legal documents and a thick medical file. There was a cover letter printed on expensive, watermarked paper. I started reading it out loud, but halfway through the first paragraph, my voice died in my throat. The letter was directed to Sarah. It was from a lawyer named Jonathan Ashworth. It stated that he represented Dr. Robert Evans, Sarah's father. The man who had his medical license stripped in 1993. The man who abandoned her when she was a kid. According to the letter, Robert had fled to Australia, rebuilt his life, and somehow founded a highly successful pharmaceutical consulting firm. He was now a multimillionaire. And he was dying. End-stage renal disease. His kidneys were completely failing. He was on dialysis 3 times a week, and because of his age and the strict medical lists in Australia, he was not going to get a deceased donor transplant in time. He had maybe 6 months to live. I flipped to the second page. My stomach dropped. Robert was leaving his entire estate, approximately $10 million, to Sarah. The inheritance was unconditional. He had already established the trust. But the lawyer's letter came with a desperate, underlying plea. Robert was looking for a living kidney donor. He had hired private investigators. They had tracked us down. They had pulled our public records. And they knew about Lily. "They know her blood type," I whispered, staring at a page from a private investigator's report included in the packet. "Sarah, they know Lily is O positive. They've been watching us." Sarah took the papers from my hands. Her jaw clenched tight. I saw the muscles in her neck go rigid. For a woman who handled live voltage for a living, she looked terrified. "He hasn't spoken to me in 30 years. Now he wants to buy my daughter's organs." "We don't tell her," I said instantly. My protective instinct flared up like a wildfire. "We throw this in the trash. We don't need his money. We protect Lily." But Sarah shook her head slowly. Joshua, she is 19. She's an adult. She's studying to be a doctor. If we hide this from her, and she finds out later that her grandfather died and she could have saved him, she will resent us forever. We have to tell her the truth. All of it. It was the hardest conversation of my life. That weekend, Lily came home from campus. We sat her down at the same kitchen table where she did her high school homework. I laid out the legal documents, the medical charts, the PI report. I watched my daughter's eyes scan the papers. I expected her to cry, to get angry, to freak out. Instead, the pre-med student took over. Her face became entirely analytical. She read the lab results. She looked at the GFR numbers indicating his kidney function. He's dying, Lily said flatly. And I have the matching blood type. But blood type isn't enough. They need HLA tissue typing to see if I'm a viable match for a transplant. Lily, you don't owe this man anything, I said, leaning forward, my hands flat on the table. He hurt your mother. He is a stranger. You don't have to do this. Lily looked at me, her dark eyes completely calm. Dad, I want to get tested. Not because I am going to donate. I haven't decided that. But because I want to know if I can. Information is power, right? I want to make a decision based on medical facts, not assumptions. I hated it, but I couldn't argue with her logic. She was an adult. We supported her. The next week, Lily went to the Oregon Health and Science University, OHSU, Transplant Center to begin the evaluation process. She filled out the massive stack of insurance and medical history forms. I work in hospital administration, so I know how secure these systems are supposed to be. HIPAA laws are federal. You don't just peek at a patient's file. But a few days later, my phone rang. It was Sarah. She sounded breathless. Joshua, have you seen the news? I'm at work. Babe, what is it? Go to the Oregonian website. Right now. I pulled up the local news site on my computer. There, plastered on the front page, above the fold, was a headline that made my blood run entirely cold. Disgrace doctor's secret fortune. Australian tycoon seeks Oregon granddaughter for life-saving transplant. The article detailed everything. It named Robert. It named Sarah. It named Lily, mentioning she was a pre-med student at OSU. It exposed the $10 million inheritance. And then, buried in paragraph 8, the journalist Michael Torres added the cherry on top. He detailed my history. He wrote about how Dr. Charles and Margaret Carroll had disowned me 19 years ago. He painted the whole thing as a massive, twisted medical ethics scandal. Was the teenager being coerced by a massive inheritance? Was she trying to save a billionaire to get rich? I gripped the edge of my desk so hard my knuckles turned white. Medical evaluations are strictly confidential. The only way the press got this level of detail was a leak from inside the hospital's insurance verification department. I logged into the internal hospital directory. I typed in the department handling OHSU student insurance claims. The screen loaded. I scanned the list of department directors. There it was. Director of Insurance Compliance, Dr. Julian Carroll. My brother, the golden child. The one drowning in a messy divorce and custody battle. The one drowning in debt. He had access. He had motive. The storm hadn't just begun. It was already tearing the roof off our lives. By noon, the story had gone completely viral. It was everywhere. Twitter, Reddit, local news stations. Our house was suddenly the center of a media circus. News vans parked at the end of our street. Lily's phone blew up with thousands of messages from strangers. Some people called her a saint, a hero in training. Others called her a gold digger, accusing her of selling her body parts for an inheritance. I pulled Lily out of her dorm and brought her home. We locked the doors, drew the blinds, and shut down our phones. The tension in the house was thick enough to cut with a knife. Sarah paced the hardwood floors, furious, ready to grab a wrench and go smash some camera lenses. I sat at the dining table, my laptop open, quietly furious. I was digging into Julian. I still had contacts in the upper echelons of hospital administration. I made a few discreet phone calls. What I found out made me sick to my stomach. Julian's divorce wasn't just messy. It was financially catastrophic. His ex-wife had taken him to the cleaners. He had a massive gambling problem he had hidden from my parents. He was in debt for hundreds of thousands of dollars. He needed cash, desperately. A reporter looking for a scoop on a billionaire would pay top dollar for a leaked medical intake form. Julian had sold his own niece to the tabloids for a quick payday. I was staring at the screen, compiling the evidence, when Sarah suddenly stopped pacing. She looked out the front window through a crack in the blinds. "Joshua," she said, her voice tight, "you need to see this." I walked over. Pulling into my driveway, slowly cutting through the rain, was a pristine, silver Porsche Cayenne. I knew that car. I knew the license plate. The driver's door opened, and my mother, Dr. Margaret Carroll, stepped out. She was holding an expensive umbrella, wearing a designer trench coat. She looked exactly like she did 19 years ago, just with more wrinkles and a look of absolute panic on her face. She walked up to my porch and rang the bell. I opened the door, stepping out and pulling it shut behind me. I didn't invite her in. The cold wind whipped rain onto the porch, but I didn't care. "Joshua," she sobbed. Real tears. She was actually shaking. "Please, you have to let me in. Your dad he's sick. He has Parkinson's. It's progressing fast. We are struggling." I stared at her. "You have a funny way of showing struggle, driving a $100,000 car." "It's a lease," she blurted out, her polished facade cracking. "Joshua, the malpractice insurance premiums. Your father had to retire early. We have lawsuits. We're losing the estate." And then I saw the article. I saw that Lily is mixed up with that terrible man, Robert Evans. I saw there is $10 million involved. There it was. The ugly, naked truth. "You're not here because Dad is sick," I said, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper. "You're here because you saw the number 10 million in the newspaper. You're here because Julian is broke, you are going broke. And you think you can suddenly play the concerned grandmother to get your hands on my wife's inheritance." "No!" she cried, reaching out to grab my arm. I stepped back, letting her hand drop into empty air. "We are your family. That man is a criminal. You cannot let Lily give him a piece of her body. You have to stop her. If she does this, our family's reputation will be dragged through the mud again." I felt a cold, hard knot of absolute disgust settle in my chest. 19 years. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't ask to see Lily. Her first instinct was to control the narrative, to protect her precious reputation, and to angle for the money. "You don't get to say Lily's name," I told her, my jaw locked. "You told me you didn't have a granddaughter. I have the email. Patricia Henderson sent it on your orders." My mother flinched as if I had struck her. "I was trying to protect you from a mistake. My only mistake was thinking you ever loved me," I said. "Julian leaked Lily's medical files to the press. Don't lie, I already have the proof. Your golden boy sold us out. If you ever come near my house, my wife, or my daughter again, I will give the press the real story. I will give them the emails. I will expose exactly what the great Carroll family looks like behind closed doors." "Joshua, please," she begged, the rain plastering her hair to her face. "You can't do this to us. We are blood." "Blood doesn't make you family," I said. "Showing up does. And you are 19 years too late." I stepped back inside and slammed the heavy door, locking the deadbolt. I didn't watch her drive away. I walked back into the living room. Lily was standing at the bottom of the stairs. She had heard everything. She looked at me, her young face hardening into a mask of pure determination. "Dad," Lily said quietly, "the hospital ethics committee called. They flagged my evaluation because of the media attention and the inheritance. They are holding a mandatory hearing to determine if I am being coerced. They said I have to appear." I nodded slowly. The storm was right on top of us now. "Okay," I said, pulling her into a hug. "Then we go. And we end this." October 15th, 2025. the 11th floor conference room at the OHSU Center for Ethics and Healthcare. It was a massive room with floor-to-ceiling glass windows overlooking the gray skyline of Portland. The tension inside was suffocating. 7 committee members sat at the head table. Doctors, social workers, a retired judge. In the center was Dr. Patricia Morrison, the chief ethics officer. She was stern, impartial, and highly respected. Lily sat at a small table facing them. I sat to her right. Sarah sat to her left. On a massive 75-inch screen mounted on the wall, streaming live from a hospital bed in Perth, Australia, was Robert Evans. He looked like a ghost. Gaunt, pale, with a dialysis catheter visible in his neck. It was the first time Sarah had seen her father's face in 30 years. She reached under the table and gripped my thigh so hard her nails dug into my skin. "This committee is convened," Dr. Morrison began, her voice echoing in the quiet room, "to determine if Emma Lily Grayson has the capacity to provide informed, voluntary consent to serve as a living organ donor for her grandfather, Robert Evans. We are here to ensure there is no financial or emotional coercion." Dr. Morrison turned to the screen. "Mr. Evans, you have the floor." Robert coughed into a tissue. It sounded painful. When he spoke, his voice was raspy, exhausted. "Thank you. I want to make this very brief. I do not expect Lily to donate her kidney. I lost the right to ask for favors when I abandoned my daughter 3 decades ago. I was a coward. I lost my license because I committed fraud, and I ran away instead of facing it." He looked directly into the camera. On our screen, it felt like he was looking right at Sarah. "Sarah, I am so sorry. I know sorry doesn't fix it. I built a fortune, but I died a poor man the day I left you. The money in the trust is yours, regardless of what happens today. It is unconditional." The room was dead silent. Even the ethics board looked moved. Suddenly, the heavy oak doors at the back of the conference room slammed open. Everyone jumped. I turned around. Striding down the center aisle, wearing a tailored suit and an expression of righteous indignation, was my mother, Margaret. Right behind her was Julian, looking smug and polished in his white doctor's coat. "Excuse me," my mother announced loudly, commanding the room just like she used to command our dining table. "I am Dr. Margaret Carroll. This is Dr. Julian Carroll. We are Lily's grandmother and uncle, and we are formally objecting to this proceeding." Dr. Morrison frowned deeply. "Dr. Carroll, this is a closed hearing. You are not on the approved guest list." "I am a concerned family member," Margaret countered, stopping right behind Lily's chair. "This young girl is 19 years old. Her prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed. She is being heavily coerced by a $10 million bribe from a disgraced criminal. My son Joshua lacks the judgment to protect her, so I am stepping in. We demand the committee deny the evaluation on the grounds of severe financial manipulation." Julian nodded solemnly. "As a medical professional, I agree. This is a clear violation of medical ethics. The money is blinding them. They were playing the heroes. They were trying to look like the saviors in front of their colleagues, while simultaneously sabotaging the inheritance they desperately wanted to control." I felt a cold, absolute calm wash over me. The kind of calm that comes before you pull the trigger. I stood up. I didn't shout. I didn't raise my voice. I looked directly at Dr. Morrison. "Dr. Morrison," I said, my voice steady, "may I submit evidence regarding the accusation of coercion?" Dr. Morrison looked at my mother, then at me. "Proceed, Mr. Grayson." I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a stack of manila folders. I handed them to the committee clerk, who distributed them to the 7 board members. "If we are talking about coercion and family values," I said, pacing slightly, "let's look at Document A." An email dated August 2007. I sent this to my father, begging him to meet his newborn granddaughter. Look at the response from his assistant. Dr. Morrison adjusted her glasses and read aloud. "Dr. and Dr. Carroll have asked me to inform you that they do not have a granddaughter. Please do not contact this office again." A collective gasp went around the table. Margaret's face went instantly pale. The fake hero mask shattered. For 19 years, they did not exist in Lily's life. I continued, turning to look directly at my mother. No birthdays. No Christmases. They disowned me because my wife was a blue-collar worker. They only showed up last week. Why? Look at document B. The board members flipped the page. That is a financial audit of Julian Carroll, obtained legally through public court filings from his ongoing divorce. He is over $800,000 in debt. And look at document C. The IP address logs from the hospital's internal insurance server, showing Dr. Julian Carroll accessed Lily's confidential HIPAA-protected evaluation file 2 days before it leaked to the press. Julian physically stepped back. His smug expression vanished, replaced by sheer, wide-eyed terror. That proves nothing. I was doing a routine audit. You sold your niece's medical records to a tabloid reporter to pay your gambling debts. Julian, I said, my voice cutting like glass. You violated federal law. And you, mother, drove your leased Porsche to my house to try and manipulate me into stopping this. Simply because you couldn't stand the idea of Sarah getting $10 million while you go bankrupt. The silence in the boardroom was absolute. You could hear a pin drop. Margaret opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She looked at the committee members, her peers, her colleagues. They were looking at her with pure disgust. I turned back to Dr. Morrison. The only people trying to coerce my daughter are standing right behind her. And they have failed. Dr. Morrison looked at Julian with a gaze so severe it could strip paint. Dr. Carroll, security will escort you out. The hospital administration will be dealing with your HIPAA violation immediately. Leave. Now. Julian didn't argue. He turned and practically ran out the doors. Margaret stood there, trembling, completely destroyed. She had tried to save her reputation, and in doing so, she had burned it to the ground in front of the entire ethics board. She turned and walked out, her head bowed. Dr. Morrison took a deep breath, composing herself. She looked at Lily. Emma, Lily, given everything we have heard, the decision is entirely yours. Do you consent to donate your kidney? Lily stood up. She looked at the screen, at Robert. She looked at Sarah, then at me. She took a deep breath. No, Lily said. Her voice was strong, unwavering. I don't. She paused, letting the words sink in. Not because of the media. Not because of my grandmother. Because I am 19. I want to have a family someday. I want to be a doctor. I cannot risk my own long-term health, my only remaining kidney, for a man I do not know. I want to heal people, but I don't have to set myself on fire to keep someone else warm. She looked directly at Robert. I am sorry. I hope you find a match. But it won't be me. On the screen, Robert smiled. A genuine, tired smile. Tears pooled in his eyes. Thank you, Lily. Thank you for your honesty. You are brilliant. You made the right choice. At that moment, the lawyer, Jonathan Ashworth, spoke up through the audio feed. For the record, Dr. Morrison, Mr. Evans passed the final legal threshold this morning. The $10.2 million trust has been irrevocably transferred to Sarah Grayson. The funds are cleared. The matter is closed. Lily had said no. She had protected her body. And the money was ours anyway. My parents had lost everything. We had won our freedom. The hearing adjourned. The adrenaline that had been keeping me standing suddenly evaporated, leaving my legs feeling like lead, but my chest felt incredibly light. For the first time in 19 years, I didn't feel the shadow of the Carroll family hovering over me. We gathered our coats and walked out of the Center for Ethics. The elevator ride down to the parking garage was quiet. Sarah leaned her head on my shoulder. Lily held my hand. We didn't need to speak. The victory was in the silence. As we walked out into the damp, concrete parking structure, the classic Portland rain was misting through the open sides of the garage. I pressed the button on my key fob to unlock our modest SUV. Joshua, wait. I stopped. Stepping out from behind a concrete pillar was Margaret. She looked ruined. The immaculate trench coat was rumpled. Her perfectly sprayed hair was falling out of its pins. Julian was nowhere to be seen. He was probably already fleeing the hospital before the legal department could freeze his access badges. "Please," Margaret said, her voice a hollow, desperate rasp. She took a step toward us. She wasn't looking at me. She was staring at Sarah. Or rather, she was staring at the woman who had just legally inherited $10 million. "Joshua, you made your point," Margaret pleaded, wringing her hands together. "You embarrassed us in there. You proved you're smarter. But please, the malpractice suits are draining us. Your father's care is so expensive. If Julian loses his license over this HIPAA thing, he'll go to prison. He has kids. We are your family. You have so much money now. You can't just walk away and let us drown." I looked at the woman who gave birth to me. I searched my heart for a shred of pity, a drop of the instinctual love a son is supposed to have for his mother. There was nothing, just empty space. 19 years ago, I said, my voice remarkably calm. You handed me a garbage bag for my clothes. You told me my pregnant girlfriend was a disgrace. You told me I was a cautionary tale. I was angry, she cried. People make mistakes when they are angry. No, people make mistakes. I corrected her gently. What you did was a choice. You chose your country club reputation over your son. You chose your pride over your granddaughter. And today, you chose your greed over basic human decency. I opened the car door for Sarah. She climbed in. I opened the back door for Lily. She got in without even looking at her grandmother. I turned back to Margaret one last time. You want to know what a real family looks like? It looks like a 19-year-old girl working 60 hours a week pulling electrical wire to buy a crib. It looks like choosing each other every single day when it's hard. You don't have a family, mother. You have a brand. And your brand is bankrupt. Do not ever contact us again. I got into the driver's seat. I started the engine. Margaret stood frozen in the gray light of the parking garage, looking small, old, and utterly alone. I put the car in drive and pulled away, leaving her in the rearview mirror until she was just a speck. And then, she was gone. The drive home down I-5 was peaceful. The rain tapping against the windshield felt like it was washing the last 19 years of dirt off our lives. From the back seat, Lily pulled out one of her earbuds. Dad. Yeah, sweetie? I looked at her in the mirror. Do you think I'm selfish? She asked quietly. For saying no to him? Sarah turned around in the passenger seat. Lily, look at me. Saying no when the whole world is pressuring you to say yes is the bravest thing you can do. You protected yourself. That is not selfish. That is survival. I smiled. Your mom is right. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. You used the facts, you made a choice, and you stood your ground. I have never been more proud of you. Lily smiled, a real, full smile, and put her earbud back in. I reached across the center console and took Sarah's hand. Her calluses rubbed against my skin. We were almost 40. We had started with a garbage bag full of clothes and a rusted Ford pickup truck. We had fought tooth and nail for every inch of ground we stood on. And now the storm had finally broken. The sky was clearing. We didn't know exactly what we were going to do with $10 million yet. But I knew one thing for absolute certain. We were going to use it to build, not to destroy. We were going to show the world, and my parents, exactly what blue-collar disgrace looked like when it won. 3 months later, the call came. It was a Tuesday evening in January 2026. The Portland winter was in full swing, turning the sky a relentless, bruised purple. I was sitting in my home office reviewing some hospital billing reports when my cell phone vibrated. The caller ID read Ashworth and Klein, Sydney. I answered on the first ring. It was Jonathan Ashworth, the lawyer. His voice was incredibly soft, carrying the distinct professional weight of someone who delivers heavy news for a living. Joshua, he said, I am calling to inform you that Robert Evans passed away quietly in his sleep early this morning. His heart simply gave out before the kidney disease could finish the job. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. I didn't feel a sudden rush of grief. I didn't cry. Robert was a phantom. a ghost from my wife's past who had suddenly materialized to drop a bomb on our lives before vanishing again. But I did feel a strange, heavy sense of closure. The man who had caused Sarah so much childhood pain was gone. The man who had inadvertently given us the ultimate weapon to destroy my toxic parents was at peace. "Thank you for letting us know, Jonathan," I said. "Was there a funeral?" "A small private service here in Perth, per his exact instructions," the lawyer replied. "He wanted no fanfare." Now, regarding the estate, the inheritance was placed into an irrevocable trust prior to his passing. As we discussed during the ethics hearing, there are absolutely no conditions attached. The funds will be wired to your joint account by Friday morning. Friday morning came. Sarah and I sat at our small kitchen table, staring at the screen of my laptop. We logged into our banking portal. The page refreshed. There it was. An incoming wire transfer of $10,250,000. Sarah let out a breath that sounded like a laugh and a sob mixed together. She reached out and traced the numbers on the screen with her calloused index finger. 19 years ago, this woman had stood in the freezing November rain, offering me the passenger seat of a rusted pickup truck and a promise that we would survive. We used to count pennies to see if we could afford a generic brand of peanut butter. Now, we had more money than my parents did. "What do we do with it?" Sarah whispered, resting her head against my shoulder. "We do exactly what my parents never did," I said. "We use it to build people up, not tear them down." Over the next few weeks, we treated that money not as a lottery winning, but as a tool. We didn't quit our jobs. We didn't buy a mansion in Portland Heights to rub shoulders with the elite. We didn't buy a Porsche. We stayed in the home Sarah had rewired with her own two hands. First, we secured Lily's future. We set up an airtight college fund of $500,000. It would cover the rest of her undergraduate degree, her entire medical school tuition, and her living expenses. She would become a doctor without carrying a single cent of student loan debt. The day we told her, she sat on the couch and cried into her hands. The invisible weight of her future had been completely lifted. Next, we looked at Sarah's business. Grayson Electric was already doing well, but Sarah had a vision. We injected $2 million into the company. She bought 5 brand new white Ford Transit vans. She hired 6 new apprentices, deliberately choosing young men and women who came from rough backgrounds, kids who just needed someone to give them a shot. But the best part was her new community initiative. Portland has hundreds of historic homes owned by elderly or low-income families. These houses are filled with ancient, decaying knob and tube wiring that acts as a ticking fire hazard. Most contractors charge tens of thousands of dollars to fix it, money these families simply do not have. Sarah started a sliding scale program. If a family couldn't afford the safety upgrade, Grayson Electric subsidized the cost using the inheritance money. I remember coming home from the hospital one evening in March to find Sarah sitting on the porch, covered in drywall dust and grinning from ear to ear. She had just finished a full rewire for an 80-year-old widow who had been living with blown fuses and sparking outlets for a decade because she was living purely on Social Security. "She tried to pay me with 2 jars of homemade peach preserves," Sarah laughed, wiping dirt off her forehead. "I told her that was exactly my going rate." While Sarah was busy lighting up the city, I was working on the legal paperwork for our biggest project. We took $5 million of the inheritance and established a 501(c)(3) nonprofit organization. We called it the Second Chance Family Fund. Its mission was simple: to provide immediate, no-strings-attached financial grants to young parents who had been disowned, kicked out, or cut off by their families. We wanted to be the safety net that Sarah and I never had. We wanted to be the people waiting with a warm truck in the rain. Our first applicant was a 22-year-old girl named Ashley. She had read the viral article about Lily's ethics hearing and tracked down our foundation's website. Ashley's story mirrored ours so closely it physically hurt to read her email. She was 4 months pregnant. Her strictly religious parents had demanded she give the baby up for adoption to hide the shame. When she refused, they changed the locks on the house and threw her belongings onto the front lawn. I arranged to meet Ashley at a small diner on the east side. It smelled of dark roast coffee and frying bacon. When she walked in, she looked terrified. She was wearing an oversized coat, clutching a cheap canvas bag to her chest like a shield. She sat across from me in the vinyl booth, her eyes darting toward the door as if expecting a trap. "Joshua?" she asked quietly. "That's me." "It is so good to meet you, Ashley," I said, offering a warm smile. I ordered us both some food, making sure she actually ate something warm. We talked for an hour. She told me about sleeping in the back seat of her sedan, about washing her face in gas station bathrooms before going to her shift at a retail store, about the absolute terror of bringing a child into a world where she had nothing. I reached into my briefcase. I pulled out a heavy white envelope and slid it across the laminated table. "Ashley, the board reviewed your application," I said, keeping my voice incredibly gentle. "Inside this envelope is a cashier's check for $15,000. It is yours. It is not a loan. You do not have to pay it back. It is enough to cover the first and last month's rent on a safe apartment, a security deposit, all the baby supplies you need, and a cushion for your maternity leave." Ashley stopped chewing. She stared at the envelope. Her hands started to tremble, mirroring my own mother's hands on my porch months ago. But this was a completely different kind of shaking. This was the tremor of a heavy burden finally breaking. I don't understand," she whispered, tears instantly spilling over her eyelashes and cutting tracks down her cheeks. "Why are you doing this for me? You don't even know me." "Because 19 years ago, my wife and I were exactly where you are sitting," I told her, leaning forward. "My family told me my child was a mistake. They threw me out. I know exactly how dark and cold the world looks right now. We built this fund so you wouldn't have to spend the next 5 years fighting just to breathe. You don't owe me anything, Ashley. Just be the parent you wish you had. Break the cycle." She reached across the table and grabbed my hand, sobbing openly in the middle of the diner. In that moment, holding the hand of a scared, brave young mother, I felt the last lingering ghost of my parents' rejection vanish completely. My parents used their wealth to control and punish. We were using ours to liberate. A few weeks later, in late April, I found myself alone in my home office. The house was quiet. Sarah was out on a job site and Lily was back on campus. I opened my laptop and, for reasons I still barely understand, I typed Robert Evans' name into the search bar, followed by the word obituary. I found a digital memorial page hosted by a newspaper in Perth. There were photos of Robert the first had never seen. A young man graduating medical school. A middle-aged man cutting a ribbon at a corporate office. An old man, thin and tired, looking out at the ocean. I scrolled down to the digital guestbook. It was filled with comments from his Australian colleagues and business partners. They praised his sharp mind, his ruthless negotiation skills, his philanthropy in his later years. They painted a picture of a complicated, flawed, but ultimately respected man. I clicked the button to leave a message. I stared at the blinking cursor for a long time. The sound of the rain hitting the office window filled the silence. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed, "Robert, I never met you in person. You caused my wife a tremendous amount of pain when she was just a child, and for a long time I hated you for that. But at the very end, you gave us something entirely unexpected. You gave us the truth. You didn't pretend your money erased your mistakes. You didn't demand forgiveness or force my daughter to sacrifice her body for your survival. You let her say no, and you honored her choice without resentment. That is a level of respect and dignity my own parents never managed to give me. I don't know if I can fully forgive you for abandoning Sarah, but I respect that you did not abandon your final apology. Rest in peace, Joshua." I hit submit. I didn't tell Sarah about it. It felt like a private transaction between two men who had both shaped her life in drastically different ways. But a few months later, Sarah walked into the kitchen while I was making coffee. She wrapped her arms around my waist from behind and rested her chin on my shoulder. "I saw the memorial page," she said quietly. I stiffened slightly, turning off the coffee grinder. "Sarah, I'm sorry. I should have asked you before I posted anything on his wall. It wasn't my place. No, she interrupted, turning me around so I had to look into her dark, beautiful eyes. It was perfect. It was true and it was fair. I don't forgive him either, Joshua. Some things are too heavy to just let go of. But I am glad you wrote that. It was more grace than he deserved. Grace usually is, I said, pulling her into a tight hug. We had survived the storm. The Carroll family was completely silent. Word through the hospital grapevine was that Julian was facing a severe disciplinary board for the HIPAA violation. His medical license was suspended pending a massive federal investigation. His custody battle had turned into a nightmare because his ex-wife used his financial crimes as ammunition in court. My parents were drowning in legal fees trying to keep their golden child out of federal prison, rapidly liquidating their assets. Their country club friends had distanced themselves the moment the scandal hit the papers. They had sacrificed me to protect their perfect family image. And in the end, they destroyed that image all by themselves. It was a warm Friday evening in late May 2026. The Portland rain had finally given way to a crisp, clear spring. The windows in our house were thrown wide open, letting in the smell of blooming jasmine from the garden. Lily was home for a long weekend before her summer internship started. The house was alive with noise and warmth. I was standing at the stove, pulling a massive pan of homemade lasagna out of the oven. The smell of roasted garlic, rich tomato sauce, and melting mozzarella filled the kitchen. Sarah was at the counter, chopping up a fresh salad and laughing at a story Lily was telling about her eccentric biology professor. Looking at them, bathed in the warm, golden light of the kitchen pendants, my chest physically ached with how much I loved them. This was exactly what I had fought for, this exact moment. After dinner, Sarah went out to the garage to check inventory on some new wire spools that had been delivered. Lily and I stayed in the kitchen to tackle the dishes. I was washing. She was drying. It was a comfortable, easy rhythm we had perfected over the years. Lily took a wet plate from my hand, wiping it down with a cloth towel. She was quiet for a moment, her brow furrowed in that specific way she got when her pre-med brain was overanalyzing something. "Dad," she said, not looking up from the plate, "can I ask you a serious question?" "You can ask me anything, kiddo," I said, turning off the faucet and wiping my hands on my apron. "You know that." She leaned against the counter, looking at me with dark, serious eyes. "Do you ever regret it? Giving it all up? The money, the status, your parents? You could have had an easy life. You could have been a doctor like Julian. You could have had a trust fund. Do you ever regret choosing Mom and me over all of that?" I leaned back against the sink and looked at my 19-year-old daughter. She was brilliant, fiercely independent, and she had a heart of pure gold. I thought about my father's cold, clinical voice in the dining room. I thought about my mother standing in the rain, demanding I protect her reputation over my own child. "Lily, I need you to understand the difference between regret and sorrow," I said carefully, making sure she heard every single word. "I am sorry that my parents were small-minded, arrogant people. I am sorry that they couldn't see past their own pride to welcome the most amazing woman I had ever met into their home. I am sorry that they missed out on watching you grow up." I stepped closer and put a hand on her shoulder. "But regret? I have never, not for one single second of my life, regretted walking out of that house. I didn't give up anything of value that night. I chose dignity. I chose a partner who actually shows up when things get hard. I chose love. The life they offered me was a cage made of gold. The life I built with your mother is a fortress. There is absolutely zero regret." Lily smiled, her eyes shining slightly in the kitchen light. She wrapped her arms around my neck and hugged me tight. "Is it weird?" she mumbled into my shoulder. "That I don't feel like I missed out on having grandparents? Like, I know society says I should feel this big hole in my life, but I don't. I feel completely full." "Love isn't about biology, Lily," I told her, kissing the top of her head. "Love is about who is standing next to you when the sky falls." We had everything we ever needed right here. Later that night, after Lily had gone up to her room to study, Sarah and I sat out on the back porch. We were sitting on a beat-up wooden bench I had built years ago. We each held a bottle of cheap local beer, because no matter how many millions were sitting in our bank account, old habits die hard. The night air was cool and peaceful. The neighborhood was quiet. We did okay, didn't we? Sarah asked, resting her head on my shoulder, looking out at the dark yard. We did better than okay, Sarah, I said, wrapping my arm around her. We broke the cycle. We sat in silence, listening to the crickets. I thought about the journey that had brought us here. From a terrified 19-year-old kid holding a garbage bag in the rain, to a man sitting on a porch with the love of his life, secure in the knowledge that his family was safe. If there is anything my life has taught me, it is that the concept of family is often weaponized by the exact people who should be protecting you. My parents taught me that family was a transaction. They believed bloodlines were contracts that required you to sacrifice your own happiness to maintain their public image. They believed that a blue-collar job was a disgrace, entirely blind to the fact that their own moral bankruptcy was the real tragedy. Sarah taught me that family is about showing up. It is about working until your hands bleed to put food on the table. It is about loyalty that doesn't waver when the bank account is empty. And my daughter, Lily, taught me the most important lesson of all. She taught me that saying no, even when the whole world is watching, even when millions of dollars are on the line, even when the people demanding your compliance share your DNA, is the most powerful, profound form of self-respect a person can have. My name is Joshua. I am 38 years old. I haven't spoken to my parents in 19 years, and I just watched them lose everything because they chose greed over love. And honestly, I am completely, unapologetically okay with that. We all are. So, if you have stayed with me until the very end of this long, chaotic journey, I want to say thank you. You've listened to my darkest moments and my greatest victories. But I didn't share this story just to vent. I shared it because I know there are people listening right now who are sitting at their own toxic Thanksgiving tables. People who are being told they aren't enough, or that their partners aren't good enough by the very people who should be cheering them on. I want you to hear this loud and clear. You do not owe your life, your peace, or your body to people who treat you like a PR liability. DNA is just a biological fact. It is not a life sentence. Setting a boundary with toxic family members isn't a betrayal. It is an act of survival. You have the right to walk out the door, even if you only have a garbage bag of clothes to your name. You have the right to say no to their money, their manipulation, and their demands. The family you choose, the one you build with respect, hard work, and unconditional love, will always be stronger than the one you were simply born into. I would love to know how this story resonated with you. What is your favorite takeaway from my journey? Please share your thoughts in the comments below, or simply drop the word good, so I know that these lessons brought some value to your day. Your interaction means the world to me, and it helps push this message out to someone else who might really need to hear it right now. Thank you for being part of my chosen family tonight. Stay strong and always protect your peace.